Welcome to the New Education Show with Dean Kevin and Dean Val. I'll be starting today with the new presentation introduction. This is something that Duane Lee Heppner started, and I'll give you like a brief history here. I'll just read as much as I can in my 20 minutes here. But in 2012, Duane the Great Writer created the NuPresentation Foundation. This is what we're playing off of now, the new friends, and anybody else that wants to come along with this journey and adventure. So in 2012, Duane started this foundation, a California nonprofit community organization. Duane is a California general contractor. We are all humanitarian developers and educators with the natural environment that supports us all. The real focus and real purpose of the new foundation is for your oceans now as a worldwide wake up for everyone, and especially for the children of the world. They are the future now. The land, the food, the air, and your oceans are all heavily poisoned and polluted, which is part of the marketing ploys of GMO, tech food, lethal vaccines, and pharmaceuticals, chemtrails, fluoridation, and so much more. When there are people and businesses supporting these pollutants and so many other unnatural creations that harm the natural environment, people are then supporting the politicians that rule this world and who are destroying it. This is why we have created the All Solar Research Vessel Project, so that everyone can get involved with the all natural environment and take the attention off destroying nature. And part of what we'll be doing here is, as we're doing these shows, is doing exactly that, taking the attention off all the crisis going on in the world with the COVID and the economy, etc., the control, and focusing more on what we can do to offset it. Okay, to continue, with the business plan we have created, everyone becomes successful and more aware. This level of life is a business world, and there are so many ways to work with the natural environment. We are the NuPresentation Foundation, and we are here for you. What we do with the NuPresentation Foundation. We are free beings of real light, and we become more aware by sharing something beneficial and wonderful as we live and work with the all-natural environment that supports all of us. But as I was saying, we're talking, Ronald, about the NuPresentation Foundation and how it helps people to become more aware and offset what's going on in the world. There's so many things going on that are dastardly these days that people don't know what to do. So here we are. We can offset this by doing something beneficial that people don't know what to do. So we're here to help them become aware of how to manage and what to do with what's going on. We can all do something. What we're doing here with these shows is helping people, giving them a hint of where they can go within, basically their agreements, and start chipping away, you could say, dropping some of the agreements they have, so they can see more of what's going on, and then helping others to do the same. Sharing. We do this by sharing with each other, sharing viewpoints and sharing knowledge first, and then basically we're sharing our awareness with each other, and that helps us to all become more aware.
I was watching this program the other day. These guys I watched the camping programs, and they were showing, they get their drones and they run them up in the air and they show them around I never seen so many damn dead trees in my life.
Where was this? What area was this in?
Well, I can't exactly tell you. I think it was in Northern California.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. They're all over there. It's not just in one place. It's almost like everywhere you look, they'll run their drones up. Some up in Canada, some up in Oregon, some Washington, some in just everywhere. And it's not just one or two dead. There's a whole group that would be dead, and then there'd be a little bunch of small ones around it, green ones. But all the big ones are dead. So this chemtrailing is really doing the job. They're really after to get things done. So I don't know, maybe you would think by now, though, they would start to figure that out about the chemtrails and the dead trees.
No, it's right in front of people's faces, but no, they've been so, indoctrinated into looking at, seeing things a certain way, that anything outside that they can't relate to. Even though they see it right in front of their eyes, they don't relate to it. They can't relate to it because they're so literal. So that's why, again, we're helping people see things multidimensionally.
In regards to the vessels and the UNUversities, these are actually in operation now. They're on the real side. And of course, for anything to come from the real side to the physical level does require agreement, and also sustained agreement. Because obviously, with every thought, every idea, anything created through the body vehicles is instantly so in reality, and they're on the real side. But for it to come through to the physical, so there are limitations within the consciousness affecting into the physical level, which have somewhat of a delay factor between ideas created and agreed to them being actualized on the physical level, the cause and effect time factors, etc. But the universities are present and operational now on the real side, and I have frequented them on a number of occasions and shared my experiences pertaining to my activities there. And these universities are tremendous real educational training centres where all manner of beings and body types from one end of creation to the other are all taking their real educational courses and their awareness bolstering tuition, I suppose, in these universities. And the real guides are there, almost as a position as teachers, but they're not really teaching. They're simply sharing the ears and sharing references that pertain to the ears. But of course, obviously, it's the recognition that is required for the ears, and no amount of reference will facilitate the recognition, because all references can only be that. They can't actually be the actuality of what they reference. But I've seen a number of individuals who have sort of taken up positions almost as teachers in these real side universities, because the guides will entrust these positions to individuals who have a certain degree of awareness and sincerity. And I've even seen a lot of stepping up reptilians as well, who are also excelling in their awareness processes, and they've taken up positions as teachers in these universities as well. And there was an experience I shared a while ago where there were 3 reptilians who had excelled in their real awareness process, their process of awareness to such an extent they were actually preparing to become real guides themselves. And of course, you've got to look beyond the body types and all the ideas you might have in association with them, because with most people, you mention the word reptilian and their instant reaction is that they're, as you can imagine, the reptilians are rather notorious for being the intergalactic villains and bad guys. But As I said, there are swathes of reptilians who are stepping up, who are wanting to turn their situation around. They obviously can see the simulator that's in demise and in its death spiral, and they don't want to be caught up with that. And as I said, these universities are full of various aware beings from all different body types, and they're in operation now. And not only have I seen the real side experiences where I've seen these universities and the vessels on the real side, but I've had real side experiences that present as future views where the universities become present on the physical level. And so they are potentialities for them actually coming through onto the physical level also. And like Val was saying, it's not about opposing what's already here, because engaging with any idea is actually an agreement with it, and then you become the effects of it. So it's more a case of dealing with the effects that we have had a hand in creating through a consciousness that is a part of the overall consciousness, which has affected the simulator and the situation on Earth here as well with the human species. Because if we're in a controlling situation, then we must have agreed to the particulars of the ideas of control that made that so, otherwise you wouldn't be experiencing it. So we're simply dealing with that which we have had a hand in creating. But with that, it's not a case of then opposing it and protesting, because again, that is a engaging with an idea, and therefore it is akin to the continued agreement to that idea. And so the idea is to deal with the situations that we have had a hand in creating, but more a case that we create our own position. And that's where the universities and the vessels and such come in, which is overall a focus on the natural environment, which supports us through all the life levels, as the natural environment is the isness expressed in creation. And then that's the first step for most people. And the step beyond that, the bigger picture, would of course be the true reality life is, and the recognition of that through all the comparison that everything in creation provides. And Duane, Val was saying of the importance of sharing and presenting this information. And for me, I came into the NuPresentation in November of 2019 as I came across some videos that a Russian individual by the name of Anton was producing at the time. And he put out a series of videos that Duane did, which were the real wake up, I think it was. And there was a series of 7 videos, and I've uploaded them to my computer. I made them into videos myself and put them on my YouTube channel as well. But at the time, those were the videos that I came across, and I was listening to those, and then that gleaned my interest. And then I would approach the NuPresentation. I would find them on Facebook, and eventually I got involved with the Skypes and participating in those, and then began to edit them, and it went on from there. So I can definitely testify to the importance of sharing, because obviously if Anton or other people had not put out those videos and that material, then there'll be nothing for anybody to find, and you'd be floundering around in creation forever trying to get to find the references that will facilitate your recognition of the is. And if there's no one presenting it, then if it wasn't for individuals like Duane and Paul and the various other real guides who have had a presence on the physical level presenting this, then I don't believe it's possible for anybody to get out of creation personally, because there's so much other ideas and phenomena and distractions created by the dark forces. And they will forever be setting up their own spiritual ideas as well, simply to misdirect and distract you. And practically, well, I would say more or less every single spiritual path or religion at the moment featuring creation will do nothing other than to keep you in creation. And pretty much everything at this time is completely dark force reptilian infected. And so it's quite a minefield out there. And you could spend lifetimes and lifetimes pursuing various spiritual paths and religions. As I say, since they reference nothing but creation, then that's the only place that you'll find yourself locked into the effects of what those ideas represent. And considering that they are also creations of the dark force reptilians, then also by agreeing and becoming affiliated with these various programs and spiritual courses, you're also in agreement ultimately to the controlling reptilians. And since their agenda, their intent, and their consciousness is based on control, you can't have an idea projected without that which projects it. So you agree with an idea, you agree with the consciousness that created it. And so by default, you are agreeing to the controlling reptilian consciousness and its inclination, which is to control. And so that's why practically every spiritual course, well, I would say every spiritual course and religion, unless it references the is in some way, will do nothing than to keep you tap blind by the reptilians and keep you in creation for further unconscious lifetimes, which are getting progressively more controlled and more restricted.
Thanks, Kevin. That's good. We all do our part, and even like Alex Jones and Max Egan and Mike Adams, they all have the part they play. They're basically informing us what's going on. But as you notice, they go up to a point and then they start referencing the spirit or Jesus or being a good person. You know, there's a point where they always like go into the hope, belief, faith idea. And that's where people basically are trapped in that area. So that's where we pick it up, you know, and move it along to your real awareness that you really are. The knowledge goes up to a certain point. The faith, belief idea goes up to a certain point. But the awareness, it keeps going. So that's what we're doing here with these shows and what we're doing with the sharing. I'll continue here with the new presentation, which I started. The New Presentation Foundation. We are free beings of real light, and we become more aware by sharing something beneficial and wonderful as we live and work with the all-natural environment that supports all of us. More than just nature, the natural environment is with the whole of life, that which is more so unseen than is seen on the earth alone. And again, these people like David Icke, etc., they're actually, you could say, one-dimensional, even though he talks about the different levels. But look how Kevin explained this and how it is. I mean, he's basically still in the arena of one-dimensional creational knowledge, whereas it's the awareness that actually takes you beyond, or more so than the idea of different planes and dimensions. So it's the awareness that's key, not just the knowledge. Knowledge is only good to a certain point, and then you have to lose the knowledge. Knowledge doesn't even matter anymore because it's an isness. You see it as an isness. You can't see it as knowledge because that's not what it is. So by sharing something beneficial and wonderful with each other, you become more aware in the true sense with your real awareness. Rebbe Zartars and Paul Twitchell have shared with Duane the great writer, and now Duane is sharing with all those who want real truth and real freedom now. The first part for you to become more aware is to investigate and study this world you're on. And again, that's what we're doing with these shows. New education show, we're doing the awareness show, the World Forest Report, movie review. All these are knowledge-based. It's to bring you up to a certain point where you can let go of these things and see things as they really are, as an isness. But that's a big journey. But you take it in steps and then you're okay. You take it in steps. There is so much more taking place that you do not see. None of us are supported by buildings, jobs, cars, vacations, thrills, and so much more we have come to know. We are supported by all that is natural and real. We are not political, religious, spiritual, standard education, scientific, praying worshipers to the gods of man, or any of the limiting restrictions that are so agreed to by the masses on this planet. We are wonderful and unique. As you take the time to read the new books of Duane the Great Writer, you will begin to see more than you ever have before. We are the sun shining and have no need of faith, hope, and belief in the many ideas of ritualism and ancient ceremonies. We are now and we are real. We show you, the real you, how to get your own answers with life. There is no real truth and real freedom in creation. There is only what can be created. We refer to the true reality life is, the all is, the isness. This then becomes an adventure like no other for you to get past all the restrictions that you have agreed to that look so real, but are nothing more than creations in creation. It is here that you, the real you, is given the real opportunity to see if you will wake up and recognize yourself as a free being of real light, or stay lost as a slave and servant to the controlling systems of this earth. Very few can get past the gods of man and all their ongoing taplining emotional attachments from lifetimes into the present, from so many relationships that keep you here and restricted. You can learn to recognize and perceive the all is, the true reality life is. We have all gone through lifetimes of processing our experiences with the personal self until we have the real courage to be a real risk taker and see beyond the marketing ploy of Keck systems. Duane and I watch a lot of Netflix and old movies and some of the stuff, documentaries, and also the Mike Adams, the Alex Joneses and all that. But these are all viewpoints that people have gathered. And we've been through this ourselves, all these viewpoints, just millions and millions of viewpoints to different lifetimes, to different body types. But at some point, you get person just decides, through all these experiences, and there's got to be something more than the thrills and the good times and the bad times, the pain, the suffering, the bliss. And at that point, if there's somebody around like a real guide, and you have the opportunity like you have today, then you can decide to go beyond all that stuff that you're involved in with creation and creating yourself. So we have a really great opportunity now. The authoritarians, their spiritual and corporate businesses have held the masses to a restricted side of creation. The real love people are looking for cannot be found with any of the karmic creations in time and space, even with all the marketing ploy that has been intimidatingly driven into the subconscious minds of the unaware. Duane talks about that. Even if we did get rid of all the bad guys now, and Earth became, or started to become more like it can be, still there's this subconscious part of people. If they don't take care of that, if they don't understand that they're more than the physical body, that they have 4 other bodies, it's just going to go back into what it was before. So it's a matter of like cleaning up your all the creations that you created through the millions of lifetimes, cleaning up your bodies so that you can use who you really are, your real awareness, to see more and to continue on with the process of waking up. The real secret and real love that you are looking for is with the all is. Once you recognize what is real now in the new wave, the new man, Duane the Great Writer, who was appointed by Rebbe Zartars and the Real Universal Guides, then you are on to your journey to real freedom past all the restrictions from all you have known. Almost everyone on the earth looks to controlling earthly corporations that restrict people to the lower astral realm with their pretty words of persuasion and astral tap lighting. The real focus to succeed with real love and real freedom is to be bold and brave and to share your real experiences from your real guidance and real education from your dream visions. As we each share what is real now, we become more aware, and so do others. This is how life is, more so than just following something created that only looks to be authentic. Tradition and what has been created in the past had its time and place, but it does not mean that tradition has any value now, except as a reference and a comparison. Real value will be demonstrated to those who sing the NuUU sessions and contact Rebazartars and the Real Universal Guides in your dream visions. There is so much more to ourselves and the whole of life than just staying here unaware and being comfortable with more lifetimes ahead. Most people are just chasing their next conveniences, I mean, as it is. If they're in their la-la land. Others who are like, suffering, that's another thing. They're just trying to survive. They're in a way more real because life is just about survival. The isness is just not trying, but it's just surviving. That's the nature of the isness is survival. That's like the essence. You could say it wants to survive. It wants to become more aware of itself. So if we can align ourselves with that, instead of chasing thrills or chasing whatever we think life is and being real with what life is, then we're better off in our own survival. And then we share that with others. And so everybody is supported by each other. I'll continue this part, the new presentation introduction next week. And I'll give it over to you, Kevin, or if you have any comments before we go on, go ahead.
I didn't know anything about Eckankar or Paul Twitchell or any of the guides, but, Paul Twitchell came to me in a dream state, and I didn't know who he was, but I wasn't introduced to any of this stuff when he showed up. So there's a lot of different ways that you can become knowledgeable about this new world around us. And it wasn't until I went to work for MedCal that I met Mary, which introduced me to the Tiger's Fang. She just handed me this cheap book, and she said, "Here." And that was actually the hookup, but that was about 10 years later. So it's going to take time. You're not going to get it right away. And there's all kinds of different ways that you're going to get introduced to it.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, that's the way it works. I mean, each one of us has their own process and introduction to what life is, but it just takes our decision to want to continue on and be, because it is a long process. Stamina, endurance is and patience, one of the things that we need to keep going with this, because we can get taken out very easily. Creation is very seductive here, so we maintain our focus and then we're okay. And willing to face anything that comes along. And these days, this is like a pretty interesting time of history here, where things are, where creation is imploding and things are happening very quickly here. So we are here for everybody.
Yeah, it's like Ron was saying. I mean, if an individual is ready for their process of awareness, that readiness, that want, will express as the means by which they can begin their process. And so I would imagine that just as Ron had his dream with Paul, if there were no materials out there, there was no internet, it was all shut down and regulated, so it was impossible to put out the information, And yeah, I can very much imagine the guides would directly enter the person's experience, and maybe as much as they can enter their experience on the real side. There's no reason why they can't also enter their experience on the physical level as well. So I remember Duane, in one of his new books, he said originally when the guides came to him, he was actually at the time locked in the astral prisons of the Calorm god, because Duane actually led a revolt against the Calorm god to try and oppose him and his oppression. And at that point, as I understand it, obviously Duane would have had very little information or references in regards to the ears, because this would have been, I don't know how many lifetimes ago, but as I remember, because Duane showed such courage and risk-taking to take on such an endeavour to oppose the Calorm god, which, as it turned out, was rather futile and resulted in Duane being locked in the astral dungeons, and he was tortured for what would be the equivalent of, I think Duane said in the book, thousands of lifetimes it was the equivalent of. And the guides were obviously watching, as they watch all individuals from their position, and they always wait and see the individuals who are ready, like fruit that's ripe, and then they will approach them where possible and feasible. And I think, as Duane said in his new book, one of them, I can't remember which one it was, but he said the guides approached him then while he was still locked up in the Calorm's astral dungeons. And then, as I understand it, you can't reincarnate. And even though the reincarnation process is almost automatic based on your consciousness, because it is your consciousness and your agreement to the ideas within it that will always project endless cycles of reincarnation, there is still the issue that the Calorm god has to allow you to return to physical incarnation. And if he considers you to be a troublemaker, in other words, somebody who would be undermining his controlling system, particularly individuals who would be sharing and promoting the true reality, which is the ultimate undermining of the consciousness of control, because obviously the process of awareness does involve the retracting of agreement from the consciousness. And obviously if you retract agreement from the consciousness of control, there goes the foundation base by which the whole control system and the controlling reptilian matrix is based. And so the last thing they want is for people to become more aware. And so very often, as seems to be the case, when individuals do transition and they were deemed a troublemaker by the Calorm god, then and even though they have already predicted for themselves and laid out a future physical lifetime, if they, for example, haven't recognized the ears and so require more experiences, then the Calorm god can prevent them from being able to return to the physical level. And Duane, in his new book, he spoke of how the guides approached him as they recognized his tremendous bravery in opposing the Calorm. And after spending thousands of years locked in dungeon, then it was a case of the guides breaking him out of the prison. And almost like, I think as I remember, they almost had to find an alternative means to get him to the physical level, I think. And they had to bypass the usual procedures on the astral by where, when an individual was being set to reincarnate, they go to an area where they almost select their body, as it were, all these and such and so forth. And then I think they somehow, I don't know, I think they chucked Duane through almost like a portal or something that got him onto the physical that way, bypassing the Calorm's authority. And then they obviously began to work with Duane directly, and then his lifetimes would go by, and eventually over I don't know how many millions of lifetimes Duane was being prepared for the position now, but gradually they brought him into a position where he would eventually take on a position where he'd be presenting the true reality on the physical level, and have at the time what was referred to as the rod of power, which then became the new wave is. So so even if the materials aren't available, like the internet, the videos and such, the guides will, if the individual is ready, they will approach them, because by virtue of the individual being ready, they have more or less thrown themselves open to allowing the guides to be able to approach them. And so therefore the guides can, because the guides can't really access anybody's simulation of experience unless there's open agreement that they can do so. And so generally it'll be through the materials that are shared, but in absence of that, then the guides can directly approach them through the real side in their dream experiences, or as in Duane's case, they can take even more sort of extensive measures to make their presence known by literally breaking Duane out of astral prisons and such. And so I was going to continue on reading from this book, The Truth Agenda by Andy Thomas, in regards to the anomalies which suggest that the moon landings of the 60s were hoaxed. The following information was sourced from the book The Truth Agenda by Andy Thomas. The Moon Rock Conundrum. If words are not enough, should not a solid piece of geology show that we did actually go to the moon? When doubts over photographs and testimonies are expressed, rocks retrieved from the lunar surface are usually proffered as the ultimate mitigation. But are they what scientists claim? There are two major problems with the moon rock issue. One concerns scientific presumption, and the other methods of retrieval. Very few people have ever examined moon debris. The distribution of material collected by the lunar missions has been extremely limited, and when samples are occasionally released for analysis, it is usually only to close associates of NASA or mainstream scientific bodies unlikely to challenge convention. Even then, samples are never allowed to be physically touched, but handled only under strict laboratory conditions. Those who have examined rocks or dust have often expressed how similar the samples are to terrestrial geology, with just a few supposed differences. Is this because, as scientists currently claim, Earth and Moon were once joined, split asunder by a massive collision when the solar system was young? Or could it be because the samples actually come from Earth itself? Scientific fraud has been known in many avenues of research. What proof have we that samples released by NASA came from the moon? If a cover-up of the kind claimed by doubters is in operation, the rocks could come from anywhere. Who would know the difference? Virtually no analysis of lunar materials has been genuinely scientific, because the assumption is always made from the start that the sample comes from the moon. With that very strong impression in mind, it must be hard for even the best laboratory workers to approach their work with a clear perspective. Instead of testing blind samples to see what is there, comparing them to controls without bias, as science claims should always occur, analysis of lunar material always begins with a preconception. In other words, there have been very few, if any, proper investigations to determine whether or not moon rock is actually from the moon, even when official analysis is conducted within the usual parameters. Anomalies still arise, ones that should raise more questions than are ever aired. When eminent UK astrobiologist Andrew Steele of the University of Portsmouth managed to scrutinise moon material at close quarters, his examinations revealed several components of earthly contamination. Tiny particles of plastic, Teflon, and micro-animal remains were clearly present in the samples he was sent. Given the tight strictures over delivery and handling described above, how could such contamination occur? Or was the sample of dirt simply from more terrestrial climes in the first place? In 2009, the Dutch Museum in Amsterdam discovered its moon rock, donated by the US in 1969, was in fact merely petrified wood. Thus, there are many unanswered questions about where these supposed moon samples really come from. But assuming for a moment that most of the rock does come from the lunar surface, the presumption that it could only have been brought back by the astronauts is still a narrow one. Unmanned probes have been a major, indeed the major, part of space exploration since it began. There are far fewer problems accepting the reality of this, because making robotic technology function in deep space is infinitely easier than preserving the fragile life systems of human beings, and there are no clear reasons why anyone would need to fake it. Several unmanned probes were sent to the moon before and after the Apollo missions by both NASA and the Soviet space program. Indeed, as early as 1970, the Soviets claimed to have retrieved small urns of moon dust sent back to Earth from an unmanned craft. It is not impossible that scoops of lunar material could have been retrieved by secret NASA probes in the same way. Similarly, the laser calibration mirrors left on the moon by 3 Apollo crews, another criteria often used as proof that man once stood there, could also have been placed by unmanned craft, as the Soviets achieved with their own mirrors twice. Although, when Gerhard Wisniewski attempted to find out exactly where on the lunar surface these mirrors were, no one was able to tell him. It is even possible that NASA could have bargained with the Soviets for access to lunar soil, not as unlikely as it may sound. Despite all the Cold War race into space propaganda we were fed in the 1960s and 70s, there is evidence to show that there was a quiet cooperation and collusion between the two sides in more than one area. Another source of moon material could be from meteorites. It is now well known that we have had rocks raining down on us from the planets in our solar system for millions of years, with both Moon and Mars originated meteorites, we are told, having been clearly identified. Antarctica, for instance, is littered with them. So, if automated probes or outright faking using earthly rocks aren't responsible, this is another way extraterrestrial geology could be legitimately presented for analysis. Consequently, lunar rock is not the panacea of authentication that defenders of the official NASA record would wish us to believe. Like the testimony of the astronauts, it cannot be accepted as definitive proof that we once stood on the moon. Two supposedly key pieces of evidence for the moon landings are therefore more questionable than one might like to believe, with neither astronautic testimony nor geological samples being watertight criteria. All we are left to turn to for final reassurance is the one major area remaining: the photographs and films. We shall learn all about them next week.
Well, I'm still in the air like a lot of people are. You can fake it. You sure can. And you can sure use these rocks that fall out of space and claim they came from there. There's a lot of ways you can fake it. So I just go along with the story and just say, well, okay, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's just something we deal with. There's so many things like this. Like, we have the false flag events like 9/11.
Well, they were pushing this, I'm better than you, and you're not better than me. And a lot of that was going on in the 60s and 70s. So, it makes some money and it keeps these programs going.
Yeah, it keeps the program going. Yeah, right. Funding and for other things they're doing behind the scenes, you could say, like the 5G and, money for implementing certain things that look good, but actually are not for benefit of mankind. It's like a cover, like a front for other things. And that's usually what they're doing here with what they're marketing usually in the news. Just a cover, a front. There's always something behind it, always. There's always something more. That's what we're pointing people to. There's always something more.
There's a fellow, I was reading a story about, he got a job working for one of the space agencies. I can't remember which one, but anyway, they were working on levitation. And so he was hired, and he was showing around the laboratories, and they explained to him what they were doing. They're doing all this experimenting. So he went home and he says, it's weird that it's taken so long to figure this out. And he started working with frequencies. And the next thing he knows, he's got these plates levitating in the air. So he goes back to work and he says, well, I solved your problem. He says, you use these frequencies and da-da-da-da-da. And so the boss says, well, he says, I got to fire you. He says, what do you mean you got to fire me? He says, well, you discovered what we don't want to discover because the paycheck stopped. Once you figure it out, then we no longer get any money. So that's what it boils down to. And that's why nothing gets resolved. Got to have that money keep coming in.
Yeah, and this is throughout all the sciences, anthropology and medicine, history, all these things. If you go against the narrative, you lose your funding. Basically, you lose your job. You're an outcast, and that's the way they set it up.
There's just so much corruption going on. You're living on Earth, and you just have to accept it and move on.
Yeah, to face it. Yeah, face it. Get through it.
Don't let it bother you. Just do your thing. Get your life straightened out, and maybe if you straighten your life out, maybe some of it might rub off. If it don't worry about it. It's someday we're all going to figure it out. We're all going to learn someday. Even if we don't do it today, it'll be maybe tomorrow. We'll all get there.
Okay.
I was just going to add very briefly that regardless of whether the moon landings happened or not, I mean the NASA space program and their technology, their rockets we are presented with in the surface is all pretty much a nonsense anyway, because behind the scenes they have got and have had space traveling technology for eons. The controllers actually control the planet through all the systems, including NASA. So what we are presented on the surface with their archaic rockets and such, behind the scenes, they got these secret space programs, and they've been traversing the stars for eons. And as I said, they've had the space age technology since the human race was first recreated from the intelligent monkeys on the planet when the reptilians first came here. So everything you see on the surface technological, you can guarantee that they've had, and it hasn't only just been invented or created, it's been around for as long as it's been around for eons, and more besides, and they will just roll it out as according to when it is necessary, and generally, as all their technological rollout is for the control of humanity, and certainly not for its benefit. And you see that, of course, with all the cell phone technology and such marketed as a benefit on the surface, but of course it's for control purposes, depopulation, and ultimately robotization. So I'll just end with that. So regardless of the moon landings, whether they happened or not, I mean, the technology they display is certainly nothing like that which they actually have hidden away in their bunkers and underground and far from the sight of the public masses. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. That was the New Education Show. And we'll continue with the NuUU, and then we'll see you next week. NuUU. Ronald?
NuUU.
Kevin?
NuUU.
Thank you, everybody. It's November 20th. 2021. I want to start putting the dates in here too, so we have a reference in that respect. See you next week. Thank you.